Hi there,
Hi
welcome
guys.
back to el podcast de Salón de Idiomas. Hi Rox, how are you
Hi,
doing?
I'm fine. Again, if you think of it, it's been a while without actually recording.
Yeah,
Because what we actually do, guys, I'm not sure whether you know that, but we tend to record like several podcasts in a row, and eventually, we edit them, and perhaps we might be without recording for like what, half
yeah,
a year?
half a year, yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah, that's the magic of of previous recording.
No, but the funny thing is that last time I remember recording, or perhaps not the last time, but some time ago, we were actually dressed up like now. It was cold
Yeah,
outside, and it turns out that we tend to record mostly in those kind of weather.
yeah, actually, it was like I don't know, scorching hot outside, uh, and then we were wearing like sweaters in the podcast. With people like, what is wrong with these people? Do they have like really strong AC?
No, there's actually one episode about Christmas which was recorded at the beginning of December, but I don't know why, for whatever reasons, we released it in February, and you can still see like
Yeah, the Christmas
the
decoration,
Christmas
all that.
decoration and the Christmas tree behind us. So yeah.
Yeah. But well, there you go. So now we've been away for some time since we were kind of like really busy, weren't we? Or shall we say, as in the previous episode, snowed under?
Yes, we've been quite snowed under, but for some good reasons.
Okay, and what is it for today's topic?
Well, one of them was the fact that both of us did the exam IELTS. Okay, so we had been a bit busy, like getting ready for it. We wanted to try it out, we wanted to see what that was like. And yeah, we went through that. We got our results, and now we're talking about it.
Yep. So yes, there you go. That's our today's topic. We're gonna talk about IELTS. Now, starting with IELTS, what does it stand for? Well, it goes for International English Language Testing System. And actually, this dates back to us to 1980s, late 1980s. This was actually a collaboration between Cambridge, IELTS Australia, and as well as the British Council. They all came together and created this test that has indisputable global
Yeah.
recognition, right?
Yeah, I think it tops the ranking of English official exams worldwide. We're pretty used to other exams in Europe, like I don't know, Cambridge, Trinity, and then others which have sprung up lately. But no one can deny that IELTS is the top exam, so everyone heard of it.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, if you are trying to go for higher education or trying to migrate to other countries or pretty much getting a better job position, then probably an IELTS certification would be wonderful for you. And in some cases, actually obligatory. And that's part of why this is so necessary for many people. As a matter of fact, like a couple of years ago, I believe that it was 2018, about more than 3.5 million people took the test.
Wow,
Yeah,
crazy.
that's
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Perhaps a different factor why that many people do this exam is because it has an expiration date, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it only lasts 2 years. Yeah, then you have to take the test once again. I guess that's the way to make sure that your English skills are on point, right?
Yeah, that's true. But that actually might force you to do the exam more
Yeah.
frequently, because you never know when you're gonna change, like your job or your plans in the future. So you might apply for a visa or to a different country. So you may end up doing, I don't know, like 3 times the IELTS in your lifetime.
Yeah,
So
probably. Yeah.
perhaps that's another reason that accounts for that many people doing it. It's just
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
and then of course it's worldwide recognized and important. So
Yeah. It's kind of like your cover letter to the country. It's like, you look, I speak this language very well. So, because I have an 8 band in the IELTS.
wow, to have an 8 man. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So another thing that, well, we could also take into consideration is that when you're taking this test, you have two versions actually.
Yeah.
There is the general version, which is the one that I took, and academic version, the academic IELTS test, the one that you took, right?
Yeah, I took that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So these essentially they work similarly somehow. It's just that the academic is for even more professional purposes, while the general one is more focused on like immigration and all that jazz. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, they don't differ that much, do they?
I think it's just the content of certain topics.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But we're gonna go with that part a little bit later when we are sharing our thoughts and our experience and all our drama. Did you have drama in your test?
I did have, yeah, there were certain things I didn't expect.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's that usually happens when you're used to preparing for official exams. You take for granted most of them. I've never prepared for IELTS before, so I wasn't used to it. I just wanted to try it out to see what that was like. And when you go too far too confident and you don't even bother to study too much before,
I don't know what you're
you may
talking
come
about.
across some unexpected things like I did, but we will leave that for later.
Yeah. So the very last thing that I want to talk about the IELTS is its structure, actually. It's really straightforward, as a matter of fact. It's just reading, listening, writing, and speaking. For the listening and for the reading, it's 40 questions, each of them. Pretty much time management is going to be your biggest struggle in some of the parts, especially with the reading, to my mind at least. That was a little bit challenging. But again, talking about time management is something that perhaps we should focus on a little bit later. Now, let's go to the hustle and bustle of this experience. So, how was it like for you to take this test?
Okay, so I took the IELTS Academic. It was a really positive experience, to be honest. I do have to admit, I was a bit nervous, but that was good. Since it helped me concentrate. I was a bit, like like a couple of hours before the exam, I felt a bit, like even with ants in my pants, I couldn't stay still. It's like, oh, I have to do this. And but it really helped me because I was so aware of everything around me and made me focus a lot on the listening. And I have to admit, I got the band 9 in the listening. So that was, I think I had no mistakes in the listening. Nice. But you know what? I was told before, because some of other colleagues here, Salón de Idiomas, did the exam before I did. So they told me, be careful with the listening. You listen to it just once. So you better do it perfectly from the beginning, because otherwise you have no other choice. You have no other second chance. And I somehow managed to gather like all my concentration there and do it. That I was really happy with that specific task. What about yours?
Yeah, actually, that was a little bit different for me.
Was it?
I have to admit that I felt a little more confident, like a little overconfident when I took the test. Yeah, I was like, I know how this is good. This is going. They're just gonna ask me to like write that word and just choose one option, and that's pretty much it. Like I know what are all the tricks and all the twists and turns of all these tests. So
yeah,
that's gonna be a piece of cake for me. I mean, I had a good score actually. I got like 8.5.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. However, I was a little bit frustrated because I was like, that happens to you for being too confident. Because as a matter of fact, like at the beginning of the listening, I thought, actually, yes, this is a piece of cake. There's no complications at all. Of course, we shouldn't forget that this is a multi-level test, okay?
Yeah.
So it goes without saying that the first part is going to be a little bit more straightforward than the others. Nevertheless, when things were going through, I still felt like, I don't know, like without breaking a sweat, that I was doing the entire thing. But then I was like not really paying attention.
That's what happened. I remember one. It was like a conversation. I don't remember exactly. It was multiple choice. The one that it was the recording number 3, which is a conversation between several people. Okay, and I don't remember the topic, to be honest, right now, but it was like, for me, it was, oh, this is so crystal clear. I mean, it's easy as pie. And I just, chose the answers. But then I realized that the audio was keep playing. And, and I thought, oh, there must be something hidden here because otherwise it wouldn't last for that long. And just before that exercise stopped, I changed the answer because the last line of their conversation gave me the hint to the correct answer in one of them. But I was so confident with the first thing because it makes completely sense. That's the funny thing of these exams, that they made in such a way that make you believe that other things are correct.
Exactly.
So I was overly confident, and there was just a tiny red flag there behind somewhere in my brain telling me there's something wrong because it lasts for too long. Let's keep listening to it because I would have the same. You completely understand. So it's not the problem. In my case, the problem was not the understanding, was, the double meaning of certain things.
Exactly.
So, that was it. Then I was lucky enough to, again, pay attention the latest seconds so I could correct
Oh, good for you.
some of them.
I was, unfortunately, that happened to me in part 4.
Okay.
And there's no way to try to come up with entire understanding
Indeed.
what was going on and then choose the correct answer, since in this part you actually have to write the word that they're saying. So I was like, yikes, I totally missed the word. I don't, pay attention, come on. This is actually, you should pay attention. So yeah, I believe that's where I had my errors that led me to have an 8.5.
So I guess because that would happen to me not in the listening, because I went there like having a big respect for that part, and I expect it not to be good enough. That made me be more focused.
Exactly.
But it did happen the other way around with the writing part.
How was it?
It was good. I didn't get a 9 there. I got an 8.5, 8.5, and but that was tricky. And I swear to God, up to today, I still believe I was right.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I feel the same way.
I believe the mistakes were in the last exercise. The hint was just in one single sentence, and I kept repeating that sentence in my mind. I kept repeating it like a couple of weeks ago, right after I left the exam. I did the exam, but it was so, I don't know. I of course, I made a mistake. I didn't choose the correct one. Otherwise, I would have had a higher score. But it was so obvious to me. But not because it was simple. It was not. It made you think it was the typical thing, right? So it makes you think that the answer is 1. And then in your brain, you start thinking, you start looking for different hints within the text, which leads you to believe that that's not, the first impression is not the correct one. So that's what I did. It's like, it can be that obvious. It can be that obvious, especially in part 4. So I did the other one, like the hidden answer. I chose the other one, which would have been the correct one, but it turns out it must have been the simplest, like the most obvious one must have been the correct one.
Yeah, perhaps.
Even in part 4.
Yeah, exactly, perhaps. Yeah. Perhaps it was such a piece of cake for you that it was like, no, this is too easy. It cannot be this easy.
Yeah, you think that it's crazy. It's like, it can be that easy. And we can actually see that in our classes. I mean, we prepare for official exam, for other official exam. We prepare people for doing the other exams. Usually the results are pretty good. And I'm telling this just for you to know that even though we didn't got band 9 in all the skills, we're still pretty happy with with the way we prepare people. Yet, I believe within the reading part, I had already a bit of a mind fog, because it's a bit mind-boggling with that many words, that many, like kinds of exercises, and you take for granted that something is too easy, so therefore you don't trust that. And by the way, that was what I meant to say right before. We even see this in our classes. Some of our students tell us it can be that easy. It's like sometimes it's like crystal clear. You have an answer, and apparently that should be the one. But because they prepare for a C1 or for a C2, they say, oh, it can't be that easy. There must be something hidden behind that.
Yeah.
And they end up choosing not the correct one because they don't trust,
So as you can see, this pretty much boils down to striking a balance between not get overly confident and also trusting your skills that you actually know the answer. Even if it seems too simple, then you know it because you know it. So yeah, strike a balance.
Balance. It's everything in life, balance.
There you are.
Yeah.
There you are.
We still have to learn a bit more about that.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're getting too proud, I'm going to quote Count Dooku from Star Wars. I'm sorry. Twice the pride, double the fall. So so be careful with that. So for me, the reading, I feel that perhaps I was kind of like the opposite of the listening. For me, it's actually really difficult to read. I don't know, I get so easily distracted. However, there were a couple of things that helped me a bunch. On the one hand, again, I was like, this is probably my biggest struggle reading. So I just have to make sure that I know the structure, what kind of the exercises there are out there, and practice a little, like read a couple of other things, just practicing my reading attention span, because I get distracted really easily when I'm reading, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But also, fortunately, I was able to change the setup of the computer because we took the test on a computer.
Yeah.
And you are actually capable of setting this up in dark mode.
Yeah, that's one of the wonders of IELTS. It makes it that easily digestive for you.
Exactly.
And I actually did the same thing. I changed the...
Yeah. Because like for me, reading like all in white is too aggressive for my eyes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like a vampire sometimes. But yeah, I was also able to change the color of the font for something like a little bit more visually pleasant for me, as well as I was able to zoom it. So I noticed like there was such a huge difference from having this in dark mode. At least that was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I do believe that my problem with the reading was the exercise where you have to like put chunks of a text in the text, so the entire thing makes sense. Yeah, it's so horrible for me because like I get lost like so easily when I'm reading and I start like thinking about something. I was like, so I have to go back. So when I don't have the entire text, and I have to kind of like have it as a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
I got it.
Yeah.
It's one of the most challenging for sure. I do have to admit, like right now I have a different exercise in my mind. I don't actually remember whether it's IELTS or not. When you have like different texts, I don't think it's IELTS. You have different texts, like 4 texts, and you have to decide which text says one or another. That's the most mind-boggling for me.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, because it's like all of them are similar. You have to actually, because guys, that's really important when you do the reading, is like it's paramount to identify the exact sentence or words which actually more certainly are rephrased but convey the same meaning as the answer. Because what they actually try to do with the reading is make you believe, give you like a feeling of what the correct answers are, but that's just a feeling.
Exactly.
So it's not about what you feel is right. It's about what you actually encounter in the text. So that's the positive part of the IELTS, that you're capable of actually, like underlying, choosing the words on the screen as if you're actually doing it paper-based. So that makes it easy. So in my case, that kind of exercise where you have like several texts and you have to decide which one says whatever, and all of them are similar because they talk about the same topic. That's the most difficult in my case.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't think about it that way. That's actually interesting. I thought that, to my mind, that was like kind of like the easiest because it's like really straightforward when you have like just the four texts, and
but perhaps it boils down to our own cognitive abilities. It's like our mental
really
skills is like, for some of us, synthesizing might be the most difficult part, and for me that's a piece of cake. Because I believe in my specific case, in my own personal case, I've been training my ability of summing up, of synthesizing, of making things shorter, because perhaps I'm perhaps because of my job, I'm used to that.
Yeah.
But for plenty of people, that's quite challenging. Whereas in my case, when things are the lines are so blurry, are so blurred,
Yeah.
like spotting the correct one might be the most troublesome in my specific case. But just the thing, Alonso, because we've been moving from the listening to the reading part. You've been giving some tips, which are great. By the way, a different tip that I will provide within the reading part, and this is like common sense, but I swear to God, it really, really helps, would be to be a bit, to have a bit of an interest on in your daily life, to have an interest in, in reading a bit of, pieces of news or some interesting things you can encounter on a daily basis in your social media or in newspapers. I'm telling this because all the 4 texts that I had in the IELTS were talking about topics which I had previously read about somewhere in my life.
Yeah.
I swear to God. One of them was about the kind of trees in Portugal, and there was like the eucalyptus trees in Portugal.
Oh.
And that's really interesting. And I remember because unfortunately there was a big disgrace like 3 years ago. There were these fires in Portugal. Plenty of people died. It was crazy. And one of the main reasons was because of these eucalyptus trees. So, the piece of news that I had in the IELTS exam was exactly about the same topic. Like what makes those trees so prone to be burnt that easy, or what other uses do they have? So because I had already known something about those trees, it was a bit easier for me to grasp, and it was actually even more interesting to say, oh, look at them, look at these. I've got even more insight on what made them that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So in my case, most of the topics that I came across were topics that for some reason in my life I read about. So it was not like something, I didn't encounter a big surprise, like, like, oh my God, what is this talking about?
Yeah, you certainly have a point there. For instance, the text that I remember the most was one about like going to Norway and trying to see the Northern Lights.
Okay.
So that's something that I actually really want to do at some point of my life. So I was like completely invested in the entire story, even though that again I'm not like that much of a reader.
Yeah.
I was so hooked on it. I was like, wow. So yeah, what's going on in this story? And I was like, oh yeah, you have to do the exercise, right?
Yeah, that actually happens.
Yeah.
So if you're like invested, you're really interested, something caught your attention about whatever. In the exam, it makes it easier for you because you are more prone to be focused and therefore to choose the correct answer. But then like if in your daily life you nurture a bit this curiosity towards like different kinds of pieces of news you find or whatever stories you have, and you listen to it, you read about it, you never know how that can help you later in life. This is like Slumdog Millionaire, right?
There you are. Exactly. Oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of like one of my biggest fantasies, that other things that I have collected through the years is going to make me a millionaire at some point. Great movie.
Yeah, one of the best. So sorry, I was saying that, okay, we have provided some tips on how to do the reading, at least in our experience, what helped us. Now, if we unwind just a bit back to the listening part, perhaps we can provide as well some pieces of advice, on it.
Yeah. I do want to talk about that, but perhaps a little bit later.
Okay,
Before
fair
I want to
enough.
like fully still share our dramas about the test. So
Now
let's
the
go
drama
to writing. And I have to say, this is where our differences start pointing out. Since the test, actually, the general and the academic are virtually the same, nevertheless, this is where it changes. Now, what did you have in your first writing task?
Right. Okay. So in the first part, within the academic, you have a graph, table, chart, diagram, you name it, something related to figures. Remember, figures, it's about numbers. Okay. And you're asked to summarize and report on what you are given there. Okay. So you have to use your own words. I was so confident that I knew how to use that, like topping the rank or bottoming up or reportedly, the typical words you need to
Yeah.
know in this specific case. Now, it turns out it wasn't enough in my case. But just the
Wow.
thing, yeah. So in my, that's task one. And task two, it's usually an essay, okay, in response to a point of view, argument, or a problem. Yeah, usually about these specific academic topics. So I won't say anything else. Tell me about your experience, and then we will share our.
Yeah, there you are. Again, I did not have to see any graphs nor anything along those lines. I guess that's something to be grateful for. I don't know. I had to just write a simple letter, like a cover letter, and that's pretty much it.
Oh,
Yeah, that was
cool.
actually pretty straightforward. And then again, the second one was of course an essay where I had to like talk about the impact of having more roads on the cities and how it would affect the entire society. That was pretty much it. So
Yeah.
yeah, perhaps something that is not necessarily like super academic, but something that concerns society somehow.
It just came to my mind. Yeah, so the essay I had was about. Let me just gather my thoughts for a sec. So I think it dealt about endangered species.
Oh.
Yeah, and I believe that the statement was something of the kind. What was it? Yeah, should the population provide help to the endangered species, or should we just accept the fact that it's the nature's way and we should go along with that?
Oh, that's.
I think it was something along those lines. I don't remember precisely like all the details of the statement, but it turns out it's not a topic I'm alien to. I came
Yeah.
across this topic several times
Oh.
throughout the past year, so I had like arguments to it. But in my case, I believe my bad was to stake a lot on my vocabulary, on high level structures, because I did use, I use, we usually say here inversions, high level vocabulary, passives, adverbs ly, you name it. Plenty of these C1, C2 level formulas or elements which would help you enhance your writing. So I did my best trying to use those. But I believe what actually lacked in my case, the bad thing is that I have no input on my performance,
Okay.
was that perhaps I should have kept it simpler.
You think so?
Yeah, at least the essay. Oh gosh, I tried to be like a Shakespeare there
I see.
in the essay. I think I should have kept it simpler, and make sure that the coherence throughout my arguments was really nicely grasped, like understood. And within going back to the first exercise, which was the one with the graphs and the figures, I think I lacked of a solid conclusion.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you would say that to a certain extent, having like all these really nice structures and all that jazz would be too flowery, and that could have hampered your performance?
Yes, I think that focusing mostly on the decorative elements can actually hamper your performance, because in the end, and this is important as well within the oral production, because written production and oral production go along, would be not to focus too much on the content and the shape, but mostly on providing coherence, on making it, logical and simpler to read, of course, using certain high level elements, but don't overuse them.
Okay, okay, I see. Yeah, actually, I believe that I was a little bit more straightforward in my writing, since I was like really focusing on explaining why the issue was the way that it was, in my opinion, that made sense. So of course, I used like passive voice as well as inversions and all that jazz. Nevertheless, I definitely was more like cutting to the chase in this case. I guess that's why I had more than I expected. I ended up having like a 7.5 in the writing, which it seems like it's not an easy task. I don't know. It
Yeah.
seems like from the experience of most test takers, this is definitely the part where they tend to struggle the most, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, it was the one that I had more problems with.
Okay, so now let's go to our last bit of experience, which is speaking. This was actually pretty much more straightforward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's actually just a little, not even conversation, just a little interview.
Yeah, what was it like in your case?
Mine was actually extremely pleasant. I don't know why I love all the questions.
Yeah?
Actually, yeah, I was asked like if I were not working what I was working in, what would be my dream job? And I
Okay, so
was like
you're
mentioning that I wanted to be a scientist and I
Okay.
wanted to like be in the forest and all that. I got like so carried away. I ended up talking about like the development of like renewable energies through the use of algae and like really
so
specific terms. And the examiner, I don't know, I know you know that as a matter of fact, as examiners, this is a little tip. We are trained to make faces. Okay, we have to make faces, so you kind of like know if you're making sense or not. So you have to be like, oh, or when you say something that doesn't make sense, you're like something like that. You have to make faces. I think that the guy that interviewed me had such a was so on point with this. He was like making faces all over, like for everything that I was saying. He's like, ah, oh. Like that. It was actually really hilarious. But yeah, actually,
it drove you into keeping,
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
doing
yeah.
the same thing, because if you see someone like accessible, it's like keep talking about that because
Exactly.
you made me invested into the topic. You
Yeah.
got the feeling that you have to keep speaking, right?
Yeah, exactly. There you are, exactly. That. Oh, then I should just keep going, and that's it. And actually, I didn't notice when I finished the test. Perhaps that could have happened the other way around if I had taken more a deeper look of the test. Again, I believe that I didn't have a nine band. I got an eight
Okay.
in this one. Since I believe that I wasn't like completely like super aware of the structure in case of like how long I should be speaking for each question and how it's going on. Like I knew the structure, but perhaps I didn't practice enough
Yeah.
beforehand. So perhaps if I had practiced, I would have had a better
Definitely,
score.
I
But
feel
well,
you.
here it seems that in this entire podcast, I'm just like rocking on the third conditional all over.
You're on fire with the conditional. I feel you. I was pretty confident with my performance with the speaking. The questions were not of my like, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he would ask me things about the place that I lived, the part of, because we live in Madrid. Which part of Madrid you live in and why, what makes it interesting, what makes it less interesting, would you live somewhere else? And I live in a part of Madrid which is great, but it's not the coolest. So I wasn't that inspired, like, what am I going to say here? Because for sure, there are not many interesting things about the place that I
Yeah.
live. And I made I improvised. One of the tips to improvise is like in my case, there was nothing. I feel there are not many things interesting about the place that I live currently, but I talk about the places which I would like, the things that I would
nice.
like to have within the neighborhood that I live in. So I kind of made the reality. I talked factual things based on my wishes. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, the place that I live in has no library nearby or no culture offer. But because most of the questions were aimed at telling things that there are, I just say, so there's a big library. There is a near local theater around. So I kind of answered with things as if they were factual, but eventually they were just a product of my own imagination.
You see, I actually was asked that same question, and I thought like, oh wow, this is great because I love the place where I live because I live in Chinatown. So I was like just bombarding.
You have plenty of things to mention there.
Yeah, like this thing is so cool, and this other thing is like awesome. I was like enjoying my time there.
I mean, it depends on how inspired you are, for sure. Like perhaps you take me in a different moment, and I will say, oh, I don't know. I will easily come out with plenty of things that actually exist. But for some reasons, I wasn't that inspired yet. I could resort to coming up to making factual things which were just imaginary.
Yeah.
But anyhow, and I do believe that one of the things I should have worked harder on was in the dialogue part. And this is the thing I keep telling my students. Remember, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. You have to interact with the examiner to some extent, perhaps just a tiny sentence. And what are your thoughts on that? Or, like, why do you think that? How, whatever. Ask a question because it's about a dialogue. But I was so invested in the topic and I completely forgot because as you did, I just took a short look at the structure before entering the exam, but I forgot which part was the one with interaction. Because he told me, it's like, you will have to speak about this. Don't worry if I interrupt you. And I thought, what? And I remember thinking, is this the one that I have to ask him questions or not?
Yeah.
I didn't keep count on the questions, on the exercises I was in. So I kind of missed a bit, the like,
yeah,
now you talk, now I ask you a bit, and then we keep talking. I got an 8.5, which I'm pretty happy with, but had it been for that, a bit more of an interaction I would have been happier.
There you are, exactly. Yeah, and how did you feel after the entire test? Like, how are you feeling right now? Do you feel like a better person?
I think it takes you to a humble point, and I think that's important. I swear to God, I think that's really important because as a teacher, you end up believing that you know many things. You actually do. You do know many things because in the end, you always have to be a step farther than the people you're teaching. And you've got experience, but it's never about that. I think it was a really humbling experience to go there and to realize that there are still many things for you to learn. Again, to be placed into your students' shoes and to realize again that it's not such a piece of cake, even though we convey that feeling to them. It's like, you can do it. So it was a humbling experience, but I'm thankful.
Me too. Yeah, I think that it was actually extremely positive for me for the same reasons. I was like, this is just another day in the office. And I got out, I was like, okay, well, whatever. Then I got my results and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, this is not bad at all. Yeah. I think that like having an 8 in the entire IELTS is really good. Nevertheless, I think that if I hadn't been so like confident, I perhaps would have had a better score. And another thing is that this is something that it also lets me emphasize with my students a little bit more. And sometimes, as you said, I'm more like, this is a piece of cake, whatever. So it's okay, like just follow this. And perhaps it's not just like the content wise, but also knowing that like just being there can be extremely stressful since I was kind of like calm because I was not taking the test because I need to go to another country or something along those lines. Mostly just to have the experience about it. So I was more comfortable, more calm. And nevertheless, I did see the other candidates and they were freaking out on.
I remember there was a couple. These guys they were aiming at having a visa to go to Australia, and they had like just a 2-week period to hand in their certificate. So that was their only chance, because if they had to wait for 1 more week to do it a second time, they wouldn't have met the deadline. So they were a bit stressed, and I remember like I entered directly into my teacher's role. Like, don't worry, try to focus here, you can do it. And, like calming them. But if you go with certain objectives in mind, deadlines, and so most likely your nervousness is gonna be like double.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that I lacked a little bit of that empathy because, again, like most of our students, they really need the certifications.
Yes,
Not that they
yeah.
want to just like look cool and have a really cool certification. No, they really need it to work somewhere else
Yeah.
or like start in their professional life. No, they really need it. So it's actually like extremely stressful. Then like I don't know, even fright inducing in
Yeah.
some cases. So yeah, that was also something that I was able to consider. Like, well, actually, if I'm taking the test, like I'm sitting in this computer and I don't know what to do. That's something that I also want to do for now on, being able to explain how it's the experience like when you're taking the test, like
Yeah.
explain the whole thing, so they are not like completely lost when they get there, like, oh, what am I doing here, what am I supposed to do? No, they
Yeah.
already know when I tell them, oh, well, you're gonna go to the facilities, you're gonna be asked for your identification, you're gonna have to sign some papers, and that's completely normal. Then you're gonna be given the instructions.
Yeah.
And all that actually works wonders with students.
Yeah, it does. And kudos for IELTS. They've done
Yeah.
an amazing job. All
Definitely.
the infrastructure or the logistics, everything is perfect.
Yeah.
And there was no complaint whatsoever. As for the exam, the structure, the computers, the invigilators, everything, it was like perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it was a pretty well-oiled machine. Yeah.
Yes, and but as I said before, I believe it was a humbling experience, and an experience we have to go through, not just as trainers, but also as a student. I believe, and this is the thing that I think I am starting to give even more importance than before. Keep exposing yourself to a really similar situation to the actual. How do I put this in different words? Expose yourself to that stress. Do it. Do really like plenty of mock exams. Do mock exams for the speaking part, mostly because that's where you can have like actually like an actual person asking you questions and doing the same mock exam as if you were doing the original one.
Yeah.
Expose yourself to that as often as you can, because only that way can you eventually know how to manage your own lack of coherence at
Yes.
times, excessive stress. So I think I believe that's what I'm going to be doing from now, even more than we have been doing so far.
Yes.
With the students. Plenty of mock exams.
Yeah. And also something that is pivotal to keep in mind is their endurance. Since it doesn't sound like it's a big deal, nevertheless, like sitting for 3 hours straight, it can be extremely exhausting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that they should also work on with these mock exams. So they know that they are capable of being concentrated completely for at least 1 hour.
Yeah.
Or perhaps they can increase this over time. So it's 1 hour and 30 minutes. So their performance when they are there, like
Yeah.
in the real exam, they know, oh, wait, I'm going to be 3 hours here, and that's okay. Because sometimes when we send all this, like all these parts of the test, like the reading, mostly we send readings as homework. My students say, yeah, well, I took like 3 hours to do the reading, and I was like doing one part, and then I got bored and started watching TV. Yeah, normal. That's normal. Nevertheless, that's not exactly how you're going to experience it. So yeah, mock exams are really great for that.
Yes. So for sure, from now we're going to be doing even more mock exam and for longer. That's a really good point. Endurance.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not just about your level of English, but also about your mental acuity, and working on your mental acuity, your mental agility. It's a matter of practice. This is like the gym, the harder you sweat, the more you train and the more you learn.
Exactly. No pain, no gain.
That's true.
Okay, so now you have shared a bunch of really useful tips. So now I want to do my part.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for listening. Now, I do believe that it is pivotal to know the structure like really well, because this structure is extremely fixed, as a matter of fact. In the first part, you're always going to like just share, you're going to have to share like really specific details about like a reservation or perhaps a description of a person, or you are going to start a new job and then they're asking for your personal info again. So here you have to make sure that you know how to spell, okay? Seems like simple enough. Nevertheless, perhaps it wouldn't hurt to take a look at that every now and then. And now the other thing that is imperative is the words that you're looking for to fill the gaps. I actually took a look at other tests, and I have to say that most of the words that you want to fill in those gaps are nouns, okay? And then it's adjectives, and then it's verbs. They go into this category.
So
most
the top
of them are
one nouns, second adjectives, and third verbs.
So yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So you can be really careful about that when you're like listening. You can look for nouns mainly. That's the most likely word that you're going to have to put in those gaps. So that's something that you should be paying attention to.
Okay. And I believe as well, training yourself to practice listening to things only once. Okay, that's important because we're so used to with, I don't know, usually like the typical exercises in the class or most of the exams out there, you listen to them a couple of times. So learn how, like expose yourself to doing these kinds of exercises where you listen to them just once.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is again really, really punctual. There's no like an overall idea, at least just like perhaps 5 questions of the 40 questions are like that. Nevertheless, most of the questions are just like really punctual things. So yeah, you have to be careful of like precisely following the questions. Since also, fortunately, the questions are in order along with the recording. So you don't have to like jump back and forth. So yeah.
I think it's mostly, so with IELTS, to be honest, in my experience, it was mostly concentration. Concentration. There were not many hidden answers.
Yes, exactly.
You find that in reading, but with the listening in IELTS, at least IELTS Academic, it was concentration.
Yes, exactly. So follow your guts. If you have actually really nice listening comprehension, then follow your guts and just follow the entire conversation. Just be really focused on it, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't get really overly complicated, as you're saying. You don't have to analyze, or you don't have to look for the big distractors. Yes, there are some distractors at some point. That's normal in every listening test. Nevertheless, that's not the point here. That's not the main focus. The main focus is just being concentrated. That's it.
So that makes it even simpler.
Yeah. Just it can be a little bit frightening since you only listen to it once. Therefore, just again, we say in this podcast pretty much every single episode, practice makes perfect.
Indeed, practice makes perfect. And remember to familiarize yourself with different accents. And the best way of doing that would be to listen to podcasts. We've been repeating this like a bunch of times, but it's important because in this actual material, which is not aimed at being adapted, like textbooks, they are adapted for a specific level. No. Or listenings, like audiobooks for a specific level. Don't, just listen to actual material you have out there. Like podcasts done by whoever that about topic that really interests you. Do that, and eventually you will gain a lot of understanding of a whole plethora of accents, because in the end, that's the most important thing. It's like, don't listen just to, especially with IELTS, which is multi-level. You shouldn't be just listening to, Cambridge listenings or just IELTS listening, which indeed is great. But nurture your oral comprehension as well by listening to plenty of podcasts like ours.
So subscribe. No, but definitely. Yes, being extremely familiar with the structure of the test is extremely useful. Nevertheless, you should not just leave it like that. On the other hand, you should also strive for something a little bit more challenging, which is just listening to normal conversations, as they are going to jump back and forth. They might going to interrupt each other, since these tests are perfectly crafted for you to listen. So in some cases, they are not 100% realistic. So if you're able to fully understand the more conversations, this is going to become even easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so just one last thing to close this up, since I believe that we have already delved into pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks if you're following so far, because it's been so long. So I have a little trivia here, just a couple of questions. Okay, so now which countries conduct the most IELTS tests globally?
You asking me or you asking the ones listening to us?
Well, we can do like Dora and wait for a couple of seconds. Okay. So
I would say India.
yes, by far. Yeah, they have the biggest amount of tests. Yeah, makes sense.
One of the biggest countries in the world.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's a
and
whole
actually-
continent, to be honest.
Yeah, and actually, it's the country with the biggest population having English as an official language. That's an
So,
interesting.
yeah,
That's an interesting fun fact. Okay, now how many times can someone take the IELTS test in a year?
oh, I don't know that.
Okay, so actually, there's no limit. It says here there's no limit on the number of times a person can take the IELTS test in a year. However, tests are typically offered multiple times a month, and it is advisable to leave enough time for preparation between attempts.
Definitely. And I believe now the price is going to increase a little bit. So try to do your best in the first take. You
Yeah.
don't have to repeat that many times.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah, because it's actually a little bit of an arm and a leg as most of these tests, honestly. Okay, and the last one. In which countries is the IELTS test accepted for immigration purposes?
Which country or countries?
Countries.
Okay, well, I know Australia, the UK,
yeah.
the US, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Canada.
Uh-huh.
How many are there left?
Okay, so the rest of the answer is among others. But you could also add New Zealand.
Of course. Okay,
Yeah.
so New Zealand.
Yeah, and there you are. So yeah, that was actually pretty interesting.
Okay, so the answer was also among others.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And yeah, so yeah, those are the little trivias that I wanted to share with you and whoever
Okay, cool,
of you.
cool. So, guys, despite everything, despite not getting the 9 band in all the different skills, Alonso and I, we do have to tell you that we count with really big professionals in Salón de Idiomas who have been preparing this exam for long enough, who had, when they did the exam, 9 band. So if you're willing to prepare it with us, come do it, because we have like a plethora of different exams and models you can prepare with. And plus, now you have like a real insight of people who've done it.
Yeah.
So they can tell you exactly what can go wrong or where you can improve.
Exactly.
So you can do it the best way possible.
There you are. Next.
With further ado,
Yeah, without further ado, I would say goodbye.
thank you very much for listening to our podcast. It's been
Bye.
a long one. And remember to subscribe
Subscribe.
so you can discover what new surprises we can bring for the next episode.
Yeah, there you are. Bye-bye.
Okay? Bye, guys.